Power doesn't collapse with explosions. It fractures in silence. For decades, the empire above Seoul operated like a flawless machine, offshore money flowing through invisible channels, political leverage traded behind velvet curtains, enemies erased before they could speak. At the center of it all stood one man, the chairman. Untouchable, unquestioned, unchallenged. Until one night, a single accusation shattered the illusion of control. An execution order had been altered. An auditor had been killed. And someone inside the council had dared to look at the money too closely. What was meant to be a routine internal correction became something far more dangerous, a public reckoning inside the most powerful room in the city. Because when Kang Jae-Hyun walked into the council chamber without bowing and brought his wife to the table, he wasn't just challenging a decision. He was challenging the system. And in empires built on silence, there is only one rule. If you expose the man above the king, you start a war. The council chamber sat suspended above Seoul like a throne carved from glass and shadow. 40 floors up, the city looked small, orderly, predictable. Power had a way of simplifying chaos when viewed from above. Inside, however, nothing was simple. The inner council had already gathered. 12 figures in tailored suits. Old families. Old money. Older loyalties. Some had built fortunes through construction. Others through shipping, finance, pharmaceuticals. But beneath the legal facades, they all shared one truth. The empire ran on silence. At the head of the table sat the chairman. Silver hair. Immaculate posture. Hands folded lightly before him. His expression was the calm of a man who had never been publicly challenged. Until tonight. The doors opened without announcement. Kang Jae-Hyun entered. He did not bow. He did not pause. Beside him walked Amara Sinclair. That alone caused the first ripple. She had never attended a council session. Wives were ornamental in this world, protected, displayed, but excluded from decision-making. Her presence shifted the atmosphere immediately. Heads turned. Eyes sharpened. Jae-Hyun remained standing at the center of the long black table. "My lieutenant altered an execution order," he said. The words were controlled, measured, but they struck like a dropped blade. A murmur moved through the chamber. "He murdered Isaiah Sinclair." Silence followed, heavy and deliberate. The chairman leaned forward slightly. "That is a serious accusation." "It is a serious crime," Jae-Hyun replied. He motioned toward the screen embedded in the far wall. The lights dimmed. Footage flickered to life. Security logs. Admin override. Timestamp discrepancies. Then the warehouse confession. Park Do-won's voice filled the chamber. "Yes, I altered the order." Several elders shifted in their seats. One cursed quietly under his breath. The doors opened again. Park Do-won entered under escort, hands free, posture straight. He bowed, not to Jae-Hyun, but to the chairman. "You requested my presence." Jae-Hyun's jaw tightened, but he did not react. "Did you alter the execution order for Isaiah Sinclair?" the chairman asked calmly. Do-won did not hesitate. "Yes." Gasps erupted more openly now. But he continued before outrage could settle. "I did so to protect this organization." He turned slowly, addressing the entire table. Isaiah Sinclair was auditing offshore transfers. Transfers tied to operational expansion. If those accounts had been exposed, we would all have faced international investigation. Several members stiffened. "Especially those of you with political holdings abroad," Do-won added carefully. The room shifted. The accusation was no longer personal. It was structural. He faced Jae-Hyun. "You hesitated. You were compromised by emotion. I removed a liability." The insult was direct. And calculated. The council watched Jae-Hyun closely. In this room, weakness was fatal. If he reacted emotionally, Do-won's claim would solidify. If he remained silent, doubt would linger. The chairman steepled his fingers. "Is there evidence," he asked smoothly, "that these transfers were illegitimate?" That was the pivot point. The question that revealed everything. Because it was not about Isaiah anymore. It was about the money. And whether anyone dared look deeper. Jae-Hyun did not sit. He did not raise his voice. Instead, he turned slightly. And, for the first time, He allowed Amara to step forward. Amara did not rush. She stepped into the center of the chamber as though she had been born into it. Calm, controlled, observant. The council's attention shifted from Jae-Hyun to her, not because they respected her yet, but because they were curious. And curiosity in that room was dangerous. If Isaiah's audit threatened exposure, she began evenly, then perhaps the audit should continue. The statement landed quietly, but its implications thundered. One elder scoffed. "This is not a domestic dispute, Mrs. Sinclair." "No," she replied, meeting his gaze without blinking. "It is a financial one." A few members exchanged looks. She continued. "We have secured copies of the offshore accounts in question." It was a lie. A clean, confident lie. But it introduced uncertainty. The chairman's eyes sharpened almost imperceptibly. "Copies?" he asked. "Yes," Amara said. "Including the layered shell transfers that preceded Isaiah's detention." The room cooled. No one spoke immediately. Because if she was bluffing, she was reckless. And if she wasn't, then the Empire was sitting on a fault line. Do-won studied her carefully. "You assume those transfers were criminal," he said. "I assume transparency clarifies innocence," she replied. The chairman leaned back in his chair. The tension was no longer about Do-won's guilt. It was about containment. If the accounts were investigated openly, the council risked exposure beyond internal politics. International regulators. Government scrutiny. Frozen assets. Too many moving pieces. Too many vulnerabilities. "You are bold," the chairman said finally. "I am practical," Amara answered. Jae-Hyun remained silent, allowing her momentum to build. That silence was strategic. It showed unity. Do-won shifted his weight subtly. For the first time, a flicker of calculation crossed his expression. He had expected Jae-Hyun to argue pride. He had not expected him to present partnership. The chairman made his decision quickly. Park Do-won exceeded his authority, he said. It was not outrage. It was damage control. Guards stepped forward. The room inhaled collectively. Do-won did not resist. As they secured his wrists, he looked directly at Jae-Hyun. "You still don't see it," he said quietly. There was no fear in his tone. Only certainty. He was removed from the chamber. The doors closed. Silence lingered. The chairman stood. "This council will conduct a private review of the offshore accounts," he announced. Discretion is mandatory. Which meant containment would be internal. The meeting adjourned. Members exited in small groups, voices low, alliances already shifting. When the chamber finally emptied, Jae-Hyun turned to Amara. "You lied," he said. "Yes. They will verify." "I know." A pause. "And now they believe we have leverage." She nodded. "They won't move against us openly." He studied her differently now. Not as someone to protect, but as someone to strategize beside. "You saved me," he said quietly. She shook her head once. "I saved us." Outside, the skyline remained calm. Inside the council's foundation, fractures had formed. But neither Jae-Hyun nor Amara noticed the final detail. High above the city, the chairman had not returned home immediately. Instead, he placed a call from a secure line. "Accelerate the cleanup," he said softly. On the other end, no words were needed. Only acknowledgement. Because when powerful men feel threatened, they do not debate. They eliminate. And by morning, Park Do-won would be dead. The transport van moved through the city without sirens. No marked escort. No flashing lights. Just a quiet vehicle merging into late-night traffic as if nothing extraordinary sat restrained inside. Park Do-won remained composed despite the metal cuffs binding his wrists. His expression carried neither panic nor anger. Only calculation. He understood the council's decision. He also understood something deeper. He had not lost because of evidence. He had lost because of timing. The chairman had chosen containment over loyalty, sacrifice over scandal. And Do-won, for all his intelligence, had underestimated how quickly power protected itself. Across from him, one guard checked his phone nervously. The other kept his eyes forward. "Where are we being transferred?" Do-won asked mildly. The guard didn't respond. He smiled faintly. That confirmed everything. The van turned off the main road. Industrial district. Fewer cameras. Fewer witnesses. Efficient. High above the city, in a penthouse overlooking the Han River, the chairman stood beside a window. The skyline reflected in the glass, doubling the illusion of control. His phone rested in his hand. A single encrypted message arrived. Position confirmed. He didn't hesitate. Proceed, he replied. Back inside the van, Do-won leaned back slightly, as if settling into a comfortable chair. He knew the organization. He had built much of its security structure himself. He recognized the route. Recognized the quiet. The first flicker of understanding crossed his eyes, not fear, but admiration. They're not taking me to a secondary site, he murmured. The guard glanced up. Too late. The explosion was not cinematic. It was precise. A flash beneath the chassis. A concussive burst. Metal twisted inward before the sound fully formed. Flames swallowed the van in one violent bloom of orange against black asphalt. Windows shattered outward. Steel collapsed. Within seconds, there was nothing recognizable left. By the time distant sirens approached, the fire had consumed everything. Witnesses would call it an accident. A mechanical failure. Perhaps even an escape attempt gone wrong. The narrative would be prepared before dawn. Inside the penthouse, the chairman watched emergency lights flicker faintly across the river. He felt no triumph. Only correction. Do-won had grown ambitious. Ambition was useful until it wasn't. And Amara Sinclair's presence at the council had introduced an unpredictable variable. Variables required elimination. He turned from the window and walked to his desk. A second call. Begin phase 2, he instructed calmly. Understood, came the reply. Down below, the fire died. Ash settled. And with it, the last living man who could have detailed how deep the corruption ran. Or so the chairman believed. The next morning, headlines reported an attempted escape. Internal statement: Park Do-won perished while trying to flee custody. Efficient. Clean. Within the council, reactions varied. Some accepted it without question. Others did not. Jae-Hyun received the news in silence. Min-Joon stood across from him, anger flickering across his face. That was not an escape, Min-Joon said. No, Jae-Hyun replied. Amara stood near the window, arms crossed. He was silenced, she said. Jae-Hyun nodded once. The chairman had moved faster than expected, which meant something critical. He was afraid. Not of exposure. Of leverage. Do-won implied something, Amara continued. About the offshore accounts protecting more than just theft. Jae-Hyun's eyes darkened. The chairman. The room fell quiet. They had suspected. Now they understood. The war was no longer internal. It was vertical. And the man above them had just drawn first blood. The chairman did not make public moves. He made adjustments. Quietly. Strategically. Within 48 hours of Do-won's death, internal audits were reassigned. Financial oversight was centralized under a new committee, one loyal to him. Communication protocols tightened. Access logs were restructured. On paper, it appeared as stability. In reality, it was consolidation. Jae-Hyun noticed immediately. They're isolating us, Min-Joon said, scanning updated access credentials. They're isolating you, Amara corrected. She leaned over the desk, reviewing the changes. Your voting influence is being diluted. Jae-Hyun's authority had not been formally reduced. But procedural adjustments shifted power subtly away from him. It was surgical. The chairman avoided direct confrontation. Instead, he reshaped the board around him. That night, Jae-Hyun received an invitation. Private dinner. Chairman's residence. Alone. It was not optional. Amara studied the message. He wants to measure you, she said. He wants to remind me who built the empire, Jae-Hyun replied. And who can dismantle it. The penthouse residence was colder than the council chamber. Minimalist. Controlled. The chairman poured 2 glasses of aged whiskey without asking preference. You handled the council well, he said lightly. You handled Do-won efficiently, Jae-Hyun replied. A faint smile touched the chairman's lips. Loose ends cannot remain. Was he the only one? Jae-Hyun asked. The chairman did not answer directly. Leadership requires distance from emotion, he said instead. Your wife is intelligent. But intelligence can become exposure. Jae-Hyun's gaze hardened. She is not the threat. No, the chairman agreed softly. You are. Silence stretched between them. You believe the empire needs reform, the chairman continued. Transparency. Shared authority. I believe unchecked power invites collapse. The chairman chuckled quietly. You sound like your father. That landed harder than intended. Jae-Hyun's father had died under mysterious circumstances when Jae-Hyun was still consolidating control. Official cause, illness. Unofficial whispers, pressure. Be careful, the chairman said gently. Idealism is admirable. But succession is not inheritance. The message was clear. You are powerful, but not irreplaceable. When Jae-Hyun returned home, Amara was waiting. He threatened you, she observed immediately. He reminded me. Of what? That he built this empire. Amara's expression sharpened. And empires fall. Before Jae-Hyun could respond, Min-Joon's call came through. Hyun, we have a problem. What is it? Someone accessed the backup server tied to Isaiah's audit. Jae-Hyun's pulse slowed. When? 30 minutes ago. Amara looked up sharply. That's impossible, she said. We moved that server offline. Min-Joon's voice lowered. They didn't retrieve files. They planted something. Silence. Planted what? Jae-Hyun asked. A financial trail, Min-Joon replied. A trail that makes it look like you authorized the offshore transfers. The room went still. The chairman had not retaliated loudly. He had retaliated strategically. He was not trying to kill Jae-Hyun. He was positioning him for removal. The shadow war had begun. And this time, there would be no explosions. Only erosion. Reputation. Trust. Authority. One calculated move at a time. The planted trail was elegant. That was the first thing Jae-Hyun understood when Min-Joon projected the reconstructed data across the office wall. Not messy. Not obvious. Elegant. Authorization codes bearing Jae-Hyun's digital signature. Timestamps aligned with his known login patterns. Layered transfers routed through shell corporations that had once been legitimate expansion vehicles under his authority. Anyone reviewing the files would see a simple narrative. Kang Jae-Hyun consolidated offshore funds quietly. Park Do-won discovered discrepancies. Do-won acted independently to protect the organization. The conflict escalated. And now Do-won was dead. The villain was obvious. Jae-Hyun. They're building a case for internal removal, Min-Joon said quietly. Not execution. Not yet. Discrediting. Amara stood beside the screen, arms folded, studying the coding structure rather than the surface narrative. This isn't rushed, she murmured. These backdoors were prepared months ago. Jae-Hyun looked at her. Before Isaiah died, she continued. Before Do-won altered the order. A cold realization settled in. The chairman had not reacted to Isaiah's audit. He had anticipated it. This was contingency planning, Jae-Hyun said. Insurance. Min-Joon exhaled slowly. Hyung, if the council reviews this without context, they'll see motive, Amara finished. Greed. Ambition. Internal theft. The perfect justification for restructuring leadership. Jae-Hyun remained still. Fear did not help here. Emotion did not help. Only timing. When is the next financial review session? He asked. 3 days, Min-Joon replied. That's when it happens, Amara said. They both looked at her. The chairman won't confront you privately again. He'll let the council uncover this trail, independently. It protects him. And isolates me, Jae-Hyun added. Min-Joon's jaw tightened. We can counterattack. Leak his syndicate ties publicly. No, Jae-Hyun said immediately. Both of them turned toward him. Not yet. Amara watched him carefully. You're thinking long-term, she said. Yes. If we strike without proof, he continued, we look desperate. And desperate men lose credibility. Min-Joon paced. So we wait. We reposition, Amara corrected. She stepped toward the screen and highlighted a segment of altered code. They mirrored your authorization pattern, she said. But they reused a chairman-level encryption key. Min-Joon frowned. That's internal. Yes, she replied. And traceable. A small crack in the chairman's precision. Not enough for exposure, but enough for doubt. If we present this carefully, she continued, we don't accuse him. We raise procedural concerns. Jae-Hyun's gaze sharpened. Force him to defend process, he said quietly. And powerful men hate explaining themselves, Amara replied. Silence settled between them. This was no longer reactive defense. This was strategy. But the chairman was not idle. 2 days before the scheduled review, whispers began circulating. Private calls. Closed-door meetings. One senior council member canceled lunch with Jae-Hyun abruptly. Another delayed returning his message. The erosion was working. Reputation shifted faster than evidence. On the evening before the review session, an envelope arrived at Jae-Hyun's office. No return address. Inside, copies of the falsified transfers. With a handwritten note. Resign quietly. Protect what remains. Jae-Hyun stared at it for a long time. Then he handed it to Amara. He's offering you an exit, she said. Or testing my fear. Min-Joon stepped forward. You won't resign. Jae-Hyun's expression hardened. No. He folded the note once. Carefully. He wants erosion, Jae-Hyun said. Let him see resistance. But even resistance had consequences. And the chairman had already prepared the next move. The attack did not happen near the office. Or the tower. Or any predictable place. It happened at a crosswalk. Midday. Crowded. Ordinary. Amara had insisted on reviewing external accountants connected to Isaiah's old audit trail. She moved carefully, never alone, but she refused to retreat into invisibility. Jae-Hyun admired that. He also feared it. The car accelerated without warning. Black sedan. No license plates. Too fast for traffic patterns. Min-Joon saw it first. Amara. The driver mounted the curb. Gunshots shattered through the air a split second later. Not random fire. Targeted. The crowd scattered instantly. Jae-Hyun moved without thinking. He crossed the distance between them as the first bullet struck the pavement inches from Amara's heel. He pulled her backward. A second shot grazed his shoulder, tearing fabric but not flesh deeply enough to slow him. Security returned fire. The sedan swerved sharply and disappeared into traffic chaos. Within seconds, sirens screamed in the distance. People recorded on phones. News vans would arrive within minutes. The attack had not been subtle. It had been visible. Public. Amara's breathing was controlled despite the chaos. You're bleeding, she said quietly. It's nothing, Jae-Hyun replied. But his eyes were different. Colder. This was escalation. The chairman had moved from erosion to intimidation. Not lethal. Not yet. A message. You can be reached. Back inside the secured vehicle, Min-Joon's hands trembled with restrained fury. That was not a rogue hit, he said. That was sanctioned. Yes, Jae-Hyun replied. Amara studied him carefully. You can't ignore this, she said softly. I'm not, he answered. The next morning, the council review session began as scheduled. Whispers about the attack circulated quietly around the chamber. The chairman entered with composed concern. I trust Mrs. Sinclair is recovering, he said smoothly. Amara met his gaze without flinching. Very well. Thank you. The falsified financial trail was presented. Exactly as predicted. Concern. Disappointment. Subtle implication of greed. Jae-Hyun did not react defensively. Instead, he stood. There appear to be inconsistencies in the encryption signatures, he said calmly. He projected the trace Amara had identified. A reused chairman-level key embedded within the mirrored authorization structure. He did not accuse. He asked a question. Why would a chairman-level encryption key be used in transactions I allegedly authorized independently? The room shifted. The chairman's expression did not change. But the silence deepened. He leaned forward slightly. That is precisely what we must determine, he said. Neutral. Controlled. But the seed was planted. Doubt. And doubt inside the council was more powerful than outrage. After the session, votes were delayed. No formal removal occurred. But neither was Jae-Hyun cleared. The chairman approached him privately before leaving. You are becoming reckless, he said quietly. You are becoming impatient, Jae-Hyun replied. The chairman's eyes flicked briefly toward Amara. Protect her, he said softly. This city is less forgiving than I am. It was not concern. It was warning. That night, Jae-Hyun stood alone in his office. The attack replayed in his mind. He could strike now. Expose partial evidence. Force confrontation. But that would ignite full-scale war before alliances were secured. Amara stepped beside him. You're choosing patience again, she observed. Yes. Even after today? He turned toward her. I can survive political erosion, he said quietly. But I will not survive losing you. She studied him. And if the next attempt isn't a warning? His voice lowered. Then the chairman will learn what real recklessness looks like. Outside, the skyline glittered. Peaceful. Unaware. But beneath the city's glass towers, two kings were no longer maneuvering. They were circling. And the next move would not be subtle. The city did not calm after the attack. It adjusted. Security tightened around Jae-Hyun and Amara. Vehicles rotated daily. Routes changed hourly. Meetings moved to controlled spaces. But even layers of protection could not shield reputation. And reputation was the chairman's chosen battlefield. 3 days after the assassination attempt, an emergency council session was called. Not by Jae-Hyun. By the chairman. The official reason: organizational integrity review. Unofficially, it was a vote. A quiet removal dressed as stability. The council chamber felt colder than before. The air carried something sharp, anticipation mixed with restraint. Members avoided direct eye contact. Some offered polite nods. Others offered nothing at all. Min-Joon stood near the back wall this time, not seated. Watching. Amara sat beside Jae-Hyun. That alone was a message. The chairman opened the session smoothly. Recent instability has raised concerns among our partners, he began. Financial discrepancies. Public incidents. External scrutiny. He did not say Jae-Hyun's name. He did not need to. Leadership must be unquestionable, the chairman continued. Perception is as critical as truth. There it was. Perception. One elder cleared his throat. Are we discussing succession? The chairman folded his hands calmly. We are discussing preservation. Jae-Hyun rose slowly. If preservation requires clarity, he said evenly, then clarity requires transparency. He projected the encryption trace again. The chairman-level key embedded in the falsified transfers. The room shifted uneasily. I am not accusing, Jae-Hyun continued. I am requesting independent review of all chairman-level encryption access tied to offshore structures. A bold move. Too bold for some. The chairman's expression did not flicker. You question my access, he asked mildly. I question the integrity of the system, Jae-Hyun replied. The tension was no longer subtle. This was confrontation without raised voices. An elder leaned forward. The attack on Mrs. Sinclair, does that connect to these accusations? The room tightened further. Amara answered before Jae-Hyun could. It connects to instability, she said calmly. And instability thrives in darkness. The chairman studied her for a long moment. You speak as though you sit on this council, he said. I speak because decisions here affect my life, she replied. No hesitation. No apology. A murmur rippled through the younger members. They were watching something different unfold. Not rebellion. Evolution. The chairman shifted strategy. Very well, he said. Let us vote on interim leadership until the investigation concludes. There it was. A power grab disguised as procedure. The vote began. Hands raised slowly. Measured. Calculated. Some abstained. Some supported the chairman. Some hesitated long enough to reveal doubt. When it concluded, the result was clear. Jae-Hyun was temporarily stripped of operational authority pending review. Not removed from the council, but reduced. A symbolic dethroning. The chairman rose. For stability, he said smoothly. Jae-Hyun did not argue. Did not protest. He simply nodded once. Because power taken publicly could be reclaimed publicly. And humiliation endured strategically could become leverage. As the chamber emptied, one of the younger council members approached quietly. We are not blind, he said under his breath. But we need proof. Jae-Hyun met his gaze. You'll have it. Outside the chamber, Amara walked beside him. They wanted you to react, she said softly. I know. You didn't. Not yet. Behind them, the chairman watched from the doorway. The shadow war had entered its next phase. Removal. Isolation. Pressure. But he had underestimated one variable. Stripped kings become dangerous. And Jae-Hyun no longer had position to protect. Only truth to expose. The shift in authority was immediate. Access codes revoked. Operational clearances rerouted. Security detail reassigned. Officially, it was procedural. Unofficially, it was containment. Min-Joon slammed a file down onto the table in Jae-Hyun's private office. They're freezing secondary accounts, he said. Reassigning department heads loyal to you. Jae-Hyun remained calm. Let them, he said. Amara looked between them. You're not fighting the demotion. No, he replied. I'm baiting exposure. She studied him carefully. Explain. He opened a locked drawer and removed an older device. Not part of the main network. Not tied to the council's system. My father kept redundancies, he said quietly. Min-Joon stilled. Their father had ruled before Jae-Hyun. And his death had been abrupt. Official cause, cardiac failure. But neither brother had fully believed it. What is that? Min-Joon asked. A private archive, Jae-Hyun replied. He suspected internal fractures years ago. Amara stepped closer. You think he knew about the chairman? I think he knew enough to be careful. The device booted slowly. Encrypted partitions unfolded across the screen. Old communications. Financial routing maps. And something else. A flagged anomaly report dated 6 months before their father's death. Jae-Hyun's jaw tightened. The anomaly traced offshore diversions connected to chairman-level authorization patterns. The same structural signature Amara had identified. Min-Joon's voice dropped. Hyun. It wasn't just Isaiah, Jae-Hyun finished. Their father had discovered something. And weeks later, he had died. Amara's expression shifted from tension to clarity. This isn't succession, she said quietly. It's cleansing. The chairman had not merely managed power. He had curated it. Removing threats. Consolidating control. Ensuring loyalty through fear. And when necessary, through death disguised as inevitability. A new realization settled over the room. Isaiah had not been the first. And Do-won had not been the architect. He had been an instrument. Min-Joon paced, anger sharpening his movements. If we release this. No, Jae-Hyun interrupted. Both of them turned to him. Not yet. Amara watched him carefully. You're thinking beyond exposure, she said. Yes. If we expose him without securing the younger council members, he retaliates with full force. And this time, Min-Joon added, it won't be warnings. Silence followed. The weight of generational betrayal pressed heavily against the room. Jae-Hyun closed the archive slowly. He believes I am reacting emotionally, he said. He believes stripping me of authority destabilizes me. Amara's eyes held his. Does it? He paused. Then shook his head. No. The next call came unexpectedly. One of the older council elders. Private line. I opposed your temporary removal, the elder said quietly. But I cannot oppose openly without evidence. You'll have it, Jae-Hyun replied. Be careful, the elder warned. The chairman survived 3 internal wars before you inherited leadership. He anticipates defiance. After the call ended, Amara stepped closer. He's not just protecting power, she said. He's protecting history. Yes. And history can be rewritten. Jae-Hyun looked out at the skyline. The empire his father built. The empire the chairman had shaped in the shadows. And the empire he now had to reclaim without authority. They think I've fallen, he said quietly. Min-Joon's expression hardened. You haven't. No, Jae-Hyun agreed. His voice changed. Colder. Focused. I've stepped off the throne. Amara studied him carefully. And kings are easiest to predict, he said. But men without crowns are dangerous. Outside, the city lights shimmered as if nothing beneath them had shifted. But beneath the surface, the chairman had ignited something he did not fully control. This was no longer a power dispute. It was generational reckoning. And the next move would not be defensive. It would be decisive. The removal was meant to weaken him. Instead, it liberated him. Without operational authority, Kang Jae-Hyun no longer needed to preserve the illusion of stability. He no longer needed to protect departments, alliances, or fragile reputations within the council. The chairman believed stripping him of power would force him into quiet negotiation. But Jae-Hyun had stopped negotiating. He was building. The younger council members met him first. Not in the tower. Not in official chambers. In neutral ground, a private art gallery owned by a shell corporation 2 layers removed from the organization. They arrived separately. No security detail. No formal announcements. 6 of them. Not enough for majority control, but enough to shift momentum. You asked for proof, Jae-Hyun said calmly. Amara stood beside him, tablet in hand. Min-Joon remained near the back, silent, watchful. Jae-Hyun projected the archived anomaly report from his father's private files. Timestamped diversions. Chairman-level encryption keys. Cross-reference transfers linked to the same international syndicate Amara had traced. One of the younger members leaned forward. This predates Isaiah, he said. Yes, Amara replied. And it matches the structure of the falsified trail planted against Jae-Hyun. Another member swallowed slowly. If this reaches the full council, it will fracture it, Jae-Hyun finished. That risks collapse, someone added. Collapse, Amara said evenly, is different from exposure. We don't leak externally. We force internal realignment. Silence settled. One of the members finally asked the question none of them wanted to voice. And if he responds violently? Jae-Hyun's gaze did not waver. He already has. That ended debate. The alliance was not born from loyalty. It was born from fear of stagnation. Fear of becoming expendable under a chairman who curated power through elimination. The plan unfolded carefully. Not a direct accusation. A financial inquiry motion signed by multiple council members. An internal compliance audit citing multi-era encryption discrepancies. The language was neutral. The implications were not. The request was delivered formally 2 days later during a scheduled executive review. The chairman read the motion without visible reaction. An audit of chairman-level encryption authority, he asked mildly. For historical integrity, Jae-Hyun replied. The younger members remained seated, but firm. For the first time, the chairman saw it. Alignment. Not open rebellion, but coordinated pressure. He could refuse. But refusal would validate suspicion. He could agree. But agreement risked exposure. He chose the middle path. Very well, he said calmly. An internal review committee will be formed. Not independent. Not external. Internal. Controlled. He met Jae-Hyun's gaze directly. You are persistent. I am patient, Jae-Hyun replied. The chairman's faint smile returned. Yes, he said softly. You are. That night, retaliation came swiftly. Not to Jae-Hyun. Not to Amara. To one of the younger council members who signed the motion. A controlled warehouse fire. Financial investigation launched by anonymous regulators. His businesses frozen pending review. No direct link to the chairman. But the message was clear. Alignment has consequences. Min-Joon stormed into Jae-Hyun's office. He's isolating your allies, he said. One by one. Yes, Jae-Hyun replied calmly. Amara watched him carefully. You expected this. Yes. You're not going to stop. No. She stepped closer. He's escalating pressure. So will I. Jae-Hyun picked up his phone. It was time for something the chairman did not anticipate. Public legitimacy. He reached out to 2 long-standing political intermediaries, men who preferred quiet stability over secret wars. He did not expose the chairman. He simply hinted at internal restructuring risks. Enough to make them nervous. Enough to make external observers attentive. The chairman could silence internal dissent. External instability was more complicated. The counterstrike had begun. Not with bullets. With attention. And powerful men feared scrutiny more than violence. The assassination attempt came during ceremony. The chairman had planned it carefully. An internal reaffirmation summit designed to restore unity. Jae-Hyun was invited, not as acting head, but as a council member under review. Symbolic humiliation. The room was filled with dignitaries, investors, and select political observers. The chairman stood at the podium. "Stability defines strength," he said smoothly. "Continuity defines legacy." Jae-Hyun listened without expression. Amara stood slightly behind him. Min-Joon remained near the rear exit. The moment unfolded quickly. A man posing as staff stepped forward during a transitional applause. The gun emerged from beneath a folded program. 2 shots rang out. Chaos exploded across the chamber. Min-Joon moved first. He tackled Jae-Hyun sideways. The 3rd shot struck Min-Joon's shoulder. Security responded instantly, neutralizing the attacker. Screams. Smoke. Shattered glass. Within seconds, the summit dissolved into controlled panic. The chairman's security sealed exits. Medical teams rushed forward. Min-Joon gritted his teeth but remained conscious. "I'm fine," he muttered through clenched pain. Jae-Hyun's expression changed. Not frantic. Not shocked. Cold. Calculated. The attacker had no public affiliation. No direct tie. But his weapon was unregistered within the organization's inventory. And his access badge was issued through chairman-level clearance. Subtle. But traceable. The chairman approached amid the chaos. "This is unacceptable," he said smoothly. "An attack during unity." Jae-Hyun looked at him. "You invited scrutiny," the chairman added softly. "Scrutiny invites instability." "And instability," Jae-Hyun replied quietly, "reveals truth." The chairman's gaze hardened for the first time. "You mistake resilience for invincibility." "No," Jae-Hyun answered. "I mistake fear for desperation." Security escorted the chairman away to address media control. Amara stepped beside Jae-Hyun. "That was not meant to kill you," she said quietly. "No. It was meant to justify emergency consolidation." "Yes." Within hours, a proposal circulated. Temporary emergency powers granted to the chairman for stabilization. It was bold, transparent in its opportunism. But now something had shifted. The younger council members had witnessed blood. Min-Joon's blood. Publicly. It was no longer abstract power politics. It was personal. When the emergency vote was called that evening, the room felt different. Fear had changed sides. The chairman rose to speak. But before he could begin, one of the younger members interrupted. "We request independent investigation into the summit security breach," he said firmly. Another stood. "And suspension of emergency consolidation until investigation concludes." The room murmured. Jae-Hyun did not stand. He did not need to. The chairman looked around the chamber slowly. His majority was thinning. His control no longer absolute. He saw it now. The crown was not secure. Not because of rebellion, but because of exposure. He lowered his hands slowly. "Very well," he said. The vote stalled. Emergency powers delayed. Not denied, but weakened. After the session, Jae-Hyun stood beside the panoramic window overlooking Seoul. Amara joined him. "He's losing grip," she said quietly. "He's tightening it," Jae-Hyun corrected. "And when he realizes it's slipping?" Jae-Hyun's voice dropped. "Then he stops maneuvering. And starts fighting." Behind them, Min-Joon, arm bandaged but standing, met his brother's gaze. The chairman had moved from shadow war to open aggression. And now, there would be no more subtlety. The crown was cracking. And when it broke, the fall would not be quiet. The chairman stopped pretending. Within 24 hours of the failed emergency consolidation, 3 separate council-controlled businesses were audited by government regulators. A media whisper campaign began circulating allegations of historic embezzlement under prior leadership. Anonymous tips resurfaced about Kang Jae-Hyun's supposed offshore manipulations. Pressure was no longer subtle. It was coordinated. Jae-Hyun stood in his office overlooking the river, jacket removed, sleeves rolled once, not from exhaustion, but focus. Min-Joon sat nearby, arm bandaged but steady. "They're accelerating external pressure," Min-Joon said. "If regulators freeze 2 more accounts, some council members will defect out of fear." "They were never allies," Jae-Hyun replied calmly. "They were weather." Amara entered the room holding a tablet. "I found it," she said. Both men looked up. International routing confirmation, she continued. Chairman-level authorization embedded in syndicate transfers tied to arms brokers in Eastern Europe. The encryption pattern matches the anomaly in your father's archive. Jae-Hyun stepped closer. This is direct, he said quietly. Yes. And traceable. Yes. Min-Joon exhaled. That's enough to remove him. Internally, Amara corrected. Not publicly. If this leaks uncontrolled, international authorities intervene. The empire fractures beyond repair. Jae-Hyun nodded slowly. The war had reached its final threshold. Expose him internally and risk retaliation. Expose him publicly and burn the empire entirely. The decision required precision. Before they could continue, Min-Joon's phone buzzed sharply. His expression changed. It's one of our floor managers, he said. Speak. Min-Joon listened for only seconds before going pale. Amara, he said carefully, your security team just lost contact. The air shifted instantly. Jae-Hyun's gaze snapped toward her. Location, he demanded. Warehouse district. South Docks. No hesitation. No deliberation. Jae-Hyun grabbed his coat and weapon. Amara caught his wrist. Wait. He looked at her. Think, she said. If this is the chairman, he wants you reckless. I am not calculating while you're missing. And if you storm in blindly, she pressed. He wins. Min-Joon's joy tightened. Hyun, we need strategy. Jae-Hyun's pulse was steady, but his eyes had changed. This was no longer erosion. This was confrontation. Within minutes they tracked the signal. An abandoned logistics warehouse. Security perimeter light. Too visible to be covert. Too open to be private. It was bait. Jae-Hyun assembled a controlled team, not the full force. No spectacle. No sirens. Inside the warehouse, Amara stood restrained but unharmed. Opposite her, the chairman. Alone. No visible guards. Which meant they were hidden. You came quickly, the chairman said calmly. Jae-Hyun's voice was level. Release her. The chairman regarded him thoughtfully. You are emotional, he observed. And you are desperate, Jae-Hyun replied. The chairman smiled faintly. I built this empire from dust and betrayal. Your father inherited ambition. You inherited structure. He stepped closer to Amara. She has changed you. Yes, Jae-Hyun said. And that makes you unstable. No, Jae-Hyun replied. It makes me precise. The chairman tilted his head slightly. You could end this tonight, he said. Kill me. Take power. Solidify fear. Jae-Hyun raised his weapon. There was a clear shot. Clean. Final. But movement flickered in the shadows. Snipers. Multiple angles. The chairman wasn't offering martyrdom. He was offering chaos. If Jae-Hyun fired, retaliation would be immediate. Amara met his eyes. Don't. He lowered the gun slowly. The chairman's smile widened slightly. You choose restraint again. I choose legacy, Jae-Hyun said quietly. He turned slightly. Min-Joon. The doors behind them opened. Not with gunfire. With witnesses. 3 younger council members entered with armed security. Not loyal to the chairman. Not loyal to Jae-Hyun. Loyal to survival. Amara had triggered a silent emergency alert before capture. The alliance had followed. The chairman's eyes shifted subtly. The power dynamic changed. You abducted a council affiliate, Jae-Hyun said evenly. In violation of internal codes. The younger members watched carefully. The chairman stepped back from Amara. You misunderstand, he said smoothly. This was a private discussion. Then let it remain private, Jae-Hyun replied. In the council chamber. The trap reversed. The chairman realized it. This was not a rescue. It was a setup. He released Amara. For the first time. He had miscalculated. The final council session convened before dawn. No ceremonial decor. No observers. Only power. The chairman stood at the head as he always had. But the room felt different. Less obedient. More aware. Jae-Hyun did not sit. He placed Amara's tablet on the table. The files projected across the wall. International syndicate transfers. Chairman-level encryption. Cross-era anomalies. His father's archived warning. Isaiah's audit. Duan's override. The narrative aligned like a blade. You orchestrated consolidation through elimination, Jae-Hyun said calmly. My father. Isaiah. Do-won. The chairman did not deny it immediately. He surveyed the room, measured the shifting loyalties. I preserved this empire, he said finally. Through war. Through betrayal. Through necessity. You preserved control, Amara replied. He looked at her sharply. You do not understand what it takes to build something this large. I understand what it takes to destroy it, she said quietly. Silence thickened. The younger council members stood, one by one. Not loudly, not dramatically, but decisively. The chairman studied them. You think he will lead you better? He asked. No, one member answered. We think he will not erase us. That was the difference. Not strength. Not dominance. Trust. The chairman turned to Jae-Hyun. You were meant to inherit obedience, he said. Jae-Hyun stepped forward. I inherit nothing, he replied calmly. I rebuild. Security entered. Not to kill. Not to explode. To detain. The chairman did not resist. As they approached, he spoke one final time. Power never disappears, Kang Jae-Hyun. It only changes hands. I know, Jae-Hyun said. The chairman was escorted out. Alive. Exposed. Removed. The council fractured, but did not collapse. Emergency reforms passed immediately. Dual signature authority. Independent financial oversight. Encrypted access audits. For the first time, leadership was shared. As dawn broke, Jae-Hyun entered the chamber alone. He sat at the head of the table. The chair felt different. Not heavier. Clearer. Amara entered moments later. She did not stand behind him. She sat beside him. Equal. Min-Joon took his place across from them. The gold ring on Jae-Hyun's finger caught the morning light. He removed it slowly. Placed it on the table between them. No more shadows, he said quietly. Amara studied him. No more silence, she replied. He nodded. Outside, Seoul moved as it always had, unaware that an empire had shifted overnight. The chairman had been the man above the king. Now he was history. But history never ends cleanly. As the council doors closed and the new structure took shape, an encrypted alert flashed on Min-Joon's secured device. Unknown international sender. Subject line. Leadership transition acknowledged. Amara noticed the change in his expression. What is it? Min-Joon turned the screen toward them. Jae-Hyun read the message once. Then twice. No threat. No demand. Just awareness. The chairman had been part of something larger. And larger forces had just taken notice. Jae-Hyun leaned back slightly. The crown had changed hands. But the war was evolving. And somewhere beyond Seoul's skyline, someone new was already watching. Seoul did not celebrate revolutions. It absorbed them. By the end of the week, markets stabilized. The council issued a formal statement about structural modernization. Investors were reassured. External partners were told that leadership transition had been planned. Planned. The word tasted almost ironic. Inside the tower, however, nothing felt casual. The chairman was gone, detained under internal authority, held in a secured private location known only to 3 council members. There would be no public arrest. No spectacle. No confession broadcast. He had ruled through silence. He would fall the same way. But removal did not equal safety. It meant vacuum. And vacuums attracted pressure. Jae-Hyun stood alone in the council chamber long after the others had left. The city lights shimmered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, reflecting against the polished black table where power had changed hands. He no longer wore the gold ring. It rested inside a drawer behind him. Not discarded. Not reclaimed. Paused. Footsteps approached softly. Amara entered without announcement. You should sleep, she said quietly. So should you. She walked to the window beside him. For a moment, neither spoke. The skyline stretched endlessly, unaware that its quiet stability rested on fragile decisions made in rooms like this. They will test you, she said finally. Yes. Internally. Yes. And externally. He nodded once. Min-Joon traced the international syndicate branch further, she continued. The chairman wasn't independent. He was aligned. With whom? She hesitated. That's the problem. There was no single name. No single syndicate. The routing patterns connected across borders, private military brokers, shipping conglomerates, discrete political financiers. It was not one enemy. It was a network. The message you received, she added, was acknowledgement, not threat. A reminder, Jae-Hyun corrected. Yes, a reminder that leadership changes are noticed. Especially when an internal power structure dismantles a man who had provided stability to external partners for decades. Silence returned. Amara turned slightly toward him. You chose not to kill him. Yes. You could have. Yes. Why? He didn't answer immediately. Because it would have been easier. Because vengeance would have been simple. Because blood would have closed the chapter cleanly. But clean endings are illusions. Because if I rule through fear, he said quietly, I become him. Her gaze softened, not with weakness, but with understanding. That choice, she said, is what made them follow you. He looked at her. No, he replied gently. It's what made you stay. The air shifted. Not heavy. Grounded. Min-Joon entered moments later, tablet in hand. There's movement, he said. From where? Jae-Hyun asked. 3 international accounts that previously aligned with the chairman have frozen transfers. They're recalculating. They're assessing risk, Amara said. Yes, Min-Joon confirmed. And waiting to see if you are predictable. Jae-Hyun's expression did not change. Then we remain disciplined. Min-Joon studied his brother carefully. You realize this isn't over. I know. The chairman was a node, Min-Joon said quietly. Not the system. Jae-Hyun stepped back from the window and looked at both of them. Then we adapt to the system, he replied. Not by returning to old methods. Not by mirroring the chairman's shadow war. But by evolving. The reforms began immediately. Independent financial oversight installed permanently. Rotational encryption keys controlled by multiple signatories. Internal whistle protections embedded into the structure. Transparency, not softness. Accountability, not exposure. It was slower. Harder. Less glamorous. But stronger. Late that night, when the building finally quieted, Jae-Hyun reopened the drawer and looked at the gold ring resting inside. It symbolized authority. Legacy. Control. He did not put it back on. Instead, he closed the drawer gently. Outside, beyond Seoul's skyline, an encrypted message moved across foreign servers. Leadership confirmed. Behavioral shift observed. Strategic recalibration advised. Somewhere in another time zone, a figure reviewed the transition summary. Not alarmed. Interested. Because empires are not isolated structures. They are ecosystems. And ecosystems respond to change. Back in the tower, Amara stood beside Jae-Hyun once more. No more secrets, she said softly. No more shadows, he replied. Below them, the city continued breathing. Unaware that the war for control had not ended, it had widened. The chairman had been the man above the king. Now the king stood exposed to a larger world. And in that world, power never sleeps. It watches. And waits.